one funny story. When the Baltimore Ravens reached out to me, they said that they have a running backs workout and they want me to come throw. I misinterpreted that, and I didn't want to ask too many questions, but I kind of misinterpreted that and thought they were saying like, "Hey, we want to put you at running back." So I was like, "Running back?" And like, "Yeah, we have running backs. We'd love to bring you in." And it was before they said throw. They said, "Hey, we would love to bring you in to our running backs workout." So I spent like 2 days like doing running back drills.
All right, joining me today is Pittsburgh Maulers starting quarterback Vad Lee. Hailing from James Madison University, he went undrafted in 2016, but landed in the CFL right away. Today is receiving NFL interest from the Steelers and the Ravens. Vad, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm extremely excited to speak with you today. I'm sure viewers will be extremely excited to see you on the channel. If you're watching this, go ahead and hit the like button if you're a fan of Vad Lee. I always like to start off with the very beginning of your love for the game. With that being said, when did you first get involved with football?
So I got involved with football. Actually, I have an older brother that's about 7 years older than me. And there was an organization called the Durham Eagles from Durham, North Carolina. They were called the Durham Eagles, and I used to go and watch his practices. They actually practiced like in our backyard. It was a huge field right behind where we lived, and they practiced there. And I remember as a kid watching all these big football players go at it, and also seeing my brother play. It was definitely inspiring for me to want to go play. So I used to cry all the time and ask my parents why I could not play, but I wasn't old enough, and I didn't understand that when I was young. But at 4 years old, I think 4 or 5, I got an opportunity to play flag football for the Durham Eagles.
Wow, you started quite young. More often than not, we hear players talking about Pop Warner, 7, 8, 9 years old. But yeah, playing at 4 years old, that's pretty insane. That you started way back in the day.
Yeah, it was Pop Warner, actually. Yeah, it was definitely Pop Warner. I ended up winning a Pop Warner Super Bowl when I was about 10 or so. Our team went undefeated, went to Florida, so I had that experience, which was really cool. I ended up winning like MVP of the championship game. So definitely have a lot of fun memories playing with the Durham Eagles. And with that being said, I also grew up an Eagles fan. So it's funny that you got all the Eagles gear on because Donovan McNabb. I have a Donovan McNabb poster still on my wall back at home, even to this day. So I played for the Durham Eagles, and I felt like the Philadelphia Eagles were kind of like my big brothers.
That's awesome. So I'm not going to try and show you, but I've actually got a Donovan McNabb signed ball behind me. He's the whole reason I'm an Eagles fan, to be completely honest.
Nice. Great quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So in high school, you had quite the decorated career under head coach Antonio King. You lettered all 4 years. You served as a captain for 3 of those seasons. What struck me as surprising and something I didn't expect to find is that you actually played some wide receiver in high school.
I did.
How did that all come about?
Yeah, I had a quarterback ahead of me. Name is Corey Gaddis. He's a big brother to me, and he was a senior while I was a sophomore. And he was just better than me at that time. He was developed and knew the offense and probably a little bit more fluent and with running the offense. So I was the backup quarterback, and I actually would go at practice. I would go to quarterback every practice. But when we went to scrimmage situations like individual drills, I would just do quarterback. But then when we went through scrimmages and stuff, my coach decided, hey, I'm gonna throw you out that receiver. And I was running a 4-4 guy. So it worked out in my favor. All I did was run past people, and I ended up having over 1,000 yards receiving, I think with 9 or 10 touchdown passes my sophomore year. And I really hit the scenes in a recruiting trail as a receiver from coach's perspective, but I was a quarterback the whole way in my perspective. So it was always confusing when coaches came in and started offering me scholarships because they would say, hey, we're offering you a scholarship. And I would assume that it was a scholarship to be quarterback, and some would assume that, no, you're a receiver. Yeah. So I had many conversations with many different coaches about that.
Well, that brings up my next question. I mean, talk to me about your recruiting trail, given the fact that, I mean, you were a 4-star recruit coming off a 16-0 season in your senior season, state championship. I mean, multiple accolades across the way. What schools were looking at you, and what ultimately led to your decision to go to Georgia Tech?
Yeah, I think what played a part of my decision in going to Georgia Tech is actually me playing receiver, and me being labeled as an athlete. A lot of colleges wanted to label me as an athlete and not a quarterback, and I knew for sure that that was the position that I wanted to pursue, and that was the position that would best suit my career and future. So I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, you can be, this, or you can be that." And ultimately, it was just very confusing. But Georgia Tech came in from day one and said, "Hey, you're our quarterback," and that's ultimately what I wanted from a college football program. And I'm very thankful for my time at Georgia Tech. Now, they were running a triple option system. I had no idea what the triple option meant. All I knew was they wanted me to be their quarterback, and I certainly found out when I got there. Just my skill sets. Obviously being a starting quarterback in the ACC, playing for Georgia Tech, playing in that triple option system, it made me tougher. I got a lot of knowledge from the run game perspective, been there. But yeah, I had many offers. Duke, Wake Forest, NC State were pretty committed at me playing quarterback. West Virginia was pretty committed as well. And Vanderbilt came in late with James Franklin. He had just took the job as the head coach, and he wanted me to be his quarterback. But at that time, I was already committed to Georgia Tech, and I just wanted to remain faithful with my decision.
Absolutely. So you end up spending 3 years at the school with basically playing for coach that had won back-to-back ACC Coach of the Year trophies just a couple seasons before you had gotten there. Talk to me about your relationship with your coach while you were in Georgia.
Me and Coach Johnson, we had a decent relationship. Quarterback play calling relationship, is definitely, he had a certain system and a certain way that he wanted things to be run, and I had to adjust. And one thing that I like to think about my game is that I can adjust to any situation, to any type of coaching, to any any type of deal, because it's about your character at the end of the day. And I definitely grown from a young boy because of that experience at Georgia Tech, and I'm very grateful for it. And we had some success at GT, so I'm super thankful for my time, and certainly have a bunch of brothers that I was able to connect with and meet while I was there, and have a relationship with, ongoing relationships with.
Very nice. I'm glad to hear that. During the season, ultimately in 2013, you end up throwing the ball 180 times, but running it 182 times. So we talked about that run game. Basically, is this what led to your choice to ultimately transfer to a new school? Were you looking for an ability or an opportunity to pass the ball more?
Yeah, I realized that, my aspirations was to play at the highest level. And in order to do that, you have to have some experience in the pocket. You have to have some experience with different pass concepts. And, I was grateful to be able to throw to guys like Darren Waller, DeAndre Smelter, those guys who played in the NFL, and some other guys that were really talented as well. But I also knew that as a quarterback, in order for me to blossom and develop, I would need to take those 5-step drops. I would need to take those 3-step drops. I would need to have that experience, even taking 7-step drops, and that experience in the pocket, navigating the pocket, and showing my full game. I wanted the opportunity to be able to show all I can do, and not just, a small portion of it. And a lot of times when you're in a run heavy system, you throw the ball in dire situations. So third and longs, and different things like that. So percentage wise, it might not look great. But definitely when I got to James Madison, that was an adjustment back to what I was used to. JMU ran similar offense to what I ran in high school. And I just remember those first couple of weeks where I had to get my feet under me to kind of know what the pocket felt like again, and kind of know what, different pass concepts and NFL type of routes was like. So I'm very grateful for the transition. That's what led to my decision ultimately. Just wanted to give myself an opportunity to play at the highest level. And I believe that making that decision was the best choice for me. What some people would think was a step down, going to an FCS school, was actually a step up for me personally.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, seeing what you did your last year at Georgia Tech and then seeing what you did your first year at JMU, I would agree with your assessment that it was the best decision for you at the time. But I found out that during your recruiting trail, as you mentioned before, North Carolina actually recruited you. And one of the reasons that I assume you ended up at James Madison was that you reunited with Everett Withers, the head coach who had basically recruited you to North Carolina. How big of a factor was he in your decision to go to JMU?
Yeah, Coach Withers was a big part of my decision. Actually, him and my high school coach, Antonio King, were texting back and forth. And Coach King knew the situation at Georgia Tech and knew that I would be potentially looking to, possibly leave after the season. And it was a situation where Coach Withers was getting ready to take the head coaching job at GMU, but I think he had to finish up his bowl game with Ohio State. And yeah, it was a pretty cool moment. It was a pretty cool opportunity for me to come in and kind of know the head coach personally, but also, I've got to meet him in my backyard back in North Carolina when he was at UNC. And, I was in Durham. So I went to many visits to the Tar Heels. And honestly, that's where I always thought I would have ended up. Just didn't work out that way. But yeah, Coach Withers was a big influence, and he's still a big influence in my life today. I do some public speaking and different things, and I had the opportunity to go and speak at Temple University this past March because Coach Withers is there, and he just believed in me as a leader, and he has actually brought me everywhere he's been. He brought me to Texas State to come speak to his team. So he's just one of those special guys that care for me beyond football.
That's amazing. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, he obviously seems like a great coach because he did help you find ultimately your way into the professional level.
Yes.
So this partnership with you and Coach Withers ended up to being fruitful. I mean, I spoke about it before. You went from a season in 2013 in which you only attempted 180 passes to 2014 when you attempted 465 passes. I mean, talk about an amazing jump. Talk to me about your adjustment from Georgia Tech's offense to JMU's offense.
It was a big adjustment, simply because you have 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 in a route progression. At Georgia Tech it was 1 and 2, and you run if those guys aren't open. And I think early on I was kind of still in that same mindset. So a little uncomfortable back there to sit back there and go through my entire reads and progression. But as the season went on, I really began to get comfortable. I think it was maybe the 4th game of the season. I threw for 400 yards, and I've never even been close to that in my college career at that point. And that's when things started to click from there on. And I just had some unbelievable coaches that were very patient with me, willing to trust me and to be able to see the full vision, not see where I was, but see where I was going to go. And JMU is a very special place. And it's big time football at JMU, even though it was considered at the time, because now they moved up. It was considered at the time FCS, but it was big time competition, playing against some NFL caliber guys as well. That was huge. But of course, early on when I was get there, people would trash talk and say, "Hey, you're a running back. You're not a quarterback, and you can't throw the ball," and all of this stuff. And I was able to prove everybody what I could do.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, it seems like every running quarterback hears that at some point or another. But we're starting to get to that point where quarterbacks who are athletic are viewed as athletic quarterbacks and not, you can play wide receiver or running back or defensive back or whatever it used to be, 10, 15 years ago. So it's definitely encouraging from my perspective. I'm a huge fan of guys who can run like yourself. It makes it a lot more exciting to watch as a fan.
Oh man, it's really exciting. One funny story: when the Baltimore Ravens reached out to me, they said that they have a running backs workout and they want me to come throw. I misinterpreted that, and I didn't want to ask too many questions, but I kind of misinterpreted that and thought they were saying like, "Hey, we want to put you at running back." So I was like, "Running back?" And like, "Yeah, we have the running backs. We'd love to bring you in." And it was before they said throw. They said, hey, we would love to bring you in to our running backs workout. So I spent like 2 days like doing running back drills and running back field. But they were saying, no, we want you to come and, throw in front of our scout department. And we have some running backs coming in. So it was just funny, though, because I am athletic enough. I am able to, utilize my athleticism. But that doesn't mean that, if a quarterback is athletic, that he has to be a running back or wide receiver or anything. No, we can do those things. And it was cool because I got to feel what the running back feels when I throw them the ball. And I'm like, yeah, I need to make sure I put the ball right here because I got to feel it a little bit. So I like to use my athleticism as an advantage because it helps you to relate to the other guys as well and let them know exactly where you want them as a quarterback. Hey, I need you in this spot. And sometimes you might even have to get out there and run it, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. I was gonna actually ask you about that. Do you think your experience playing wide receiver actually helped you as a quarterback?
Absolutely. It definitely helped me because I knew I know what catches are hard. I know throwing over somebody's head, over the shoulder, looking over to the left shoulder to catch it out here. I know that that's extremely hard and difficult. It might be a great it might be a great throw, and people say, hey, you got to catch that. But at the end of the day, that's a tough catch. And so it definitely allowed me to understand what type of passes that receivers like. I wouldn't consider myself a guy who throws the ball through the wall. That's not necessary, in my opinion. And quarterbacks in NFL prove that on the daily. But be able to throw a catchable ball early. And if you throw the ball early, then you don't have to throw through the wall. So I definitely have learned a lot from me playing receiver my sophomore year. And like I said, sometimes I'll get out there and I'll run the route and show like, hey, I need you at this spot, especially when I'm working with younger kids who I train and help out. I'm able to lead by example.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me. So you end up signing with the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the CFL right out of college. You were under head coach Chris Jones, which actually runs the Edmonton Elks at this point. How did this opportunity come about, and what did you take from your time in Canada?
It actually came about. So I got hurt my senior year, which is a big part of my story. I got injured my senior year, and I was not available for my draft year because of surgery. And my last surgery was in March. And of course, the draft is always in April. So teams really couldn't evaluate me. However, I went to a CFL workout in March or February, and I had plates and screws in my foot. So I could not put on cleats during that time. However, I decided to still show up at that workout, and I didn't run, of course, but I was able to still drop back and throw the ball. And I threw so well that day. Chris Jones, he was running, head coach Chris Jones, he was running the workout, and I impressed him so much. He pulled me to a side afterwards and was like, hey, talk to me about the foot. When do you think you'll be healed? And just asked me a bunch of questions. And he told me to take down his number. And when I feel like I'm ready, he'll come after me. And he certainly was a man of his word. I got my last surgery in March, and the plates and screws taken out of my foot. And it took me about 2 or 3 months to recover. When I say recover, I don't think I was really 100%, but I was well enough to be able to go, and they signed me and got an opportunity to play for him a little bit.
Absolutely. After the 2016 season, you're ultimately not retained by the Rough Riders. How did you spend the 2017 season? I mean, were you still receiving interest and going to workouts? You just didn't ultimately culminate a deal?
No, I thought I was done with football. Not mentally. Physically, I felt like I wasn't at the place I should be with my injury. And also, I ended up getting married, and like now most likely we had our first child, and yeah, it was a season of my life where I thought maybe I was done with football, and so I spent time working. I actually had a variety of different jobs. Kind of like that Kurt Warner story. I ended up working in the grocery store a little bit, I got an amazing opportunity to be the team chaplain for Indiana Hoosiers football team in 2018. 2018. So 17, I didn't play at all. Thought I was done, just moving forward with life. And then 2018, got an opportunity to serve the Indiana Hoosiers football team as their team chaplain / character coach. And that's when I started to want and desire to play again, because it was my first time being around free facilities and being able to work out and being able to test my foot. And I just remember working out with the guys. I would go and do their weight room sessions. I would go and run the stairs with those guys. I would do on the field stuff with those guys in the summer. And I began to notice that, like, man, my foot feels good. And so that was the best thing that could have happened to me, was I sat out for 1.5 years, 2 years, didn't really do much, on that foot. I think I was getting ready to play arena ball in 2017. I was getting ready to play arena ball in 2017, but the Indiana Hoosiers came and they offered me a good salary and everything, and it was a great opportunity, great job. So I actually decided to take the job over playing. And again, thought I might have been done with football. It was still passionately inside of me, but I had to make some real life man, husband decisions at that time. And I still do, but yeah, I ended up coming back in 2018 when I started training with the guys, and I began to take it seriously. And that's when I think I received a call from the Baltimore Brigade Arena team. And then this new league came around in 2019 called Your Call Football.
That prefaces my next question perfectly. But before we get to Your Call Football, I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to actually talk about your book. So you published a book. It's called the title is The Purpose Over Position. Can you give our viewers a brief summary of the book and tell them where they can buy the copy?
Yeah, Purpose Over Position, Discerning God's Plan to Live a Life Full of Purpose. Purpose Over Position is a mantra that was given to me divinely, I believe, through the Lord, to just help me to, after my senior year of getting hurt, I really had to reshape my mindset. My purpose still remains as a leader on that team, and my purpose still remains as somebody that my teammates can look up to. Now, sometimes in life, our positions suck, right? Sometimes we get cut, released. Sometimes we get fired. Sometimes death happens in family, and just a lot of bad things, positionally may happen in your life, but it shouldn't alter the purpose. And that's ultimately what I'm talking about in the book, that our purpose is eternal. And I certainly use this game of football. I use this position of football to help me to build up young people. I love building up young people. I believe that's my purpose in life. I love building up people in general, but specifically young people, and using this football platform, using this football position to help further my purpose in life. So I talk a lot about that, just trying to help everyone to understand that your purpose is always greater than your position. But don't discredit your position, because your position is just as important.
Interesting. I like that philosophy. So what came first? Was it your nonprofit organization, or was it the book?
It was the book. The book came first. But ultimately, I knew that there was something greater and bigger, beyond just the book. I knew that I wanted to potentially start a nonprofit, which I just started December of 2021. And so I'm fairly fresh and new to the nonprofit world, and I'm learning as I go. However, I've been able to encourage a lot of young athletes, period, not just young, old too. I send out pop boxes, Purpose Over Position. I call it Pop Box. It's a pop box where it's a bunch of just, it's like a care package that I send out to athletes who get injured, athletes who might be going through a tough time. Actually, the Major League Football, for example, they just folded or whatever they're going through right now, which is tragic, it's traumatic. And we were able to help get some of the guys home, buy their flights and purchase their flight. So those things is why I created the nonprofit. Our mission is to serve athletes in overcoming traumatic experiences in and out of sports. And certainly, for example, that MLFB, that was very traumatic. So I've been finding myself for the past week or 2 weeks, reaching out to those players and just checking on them, seeing how they're doing, seeing if they need anything, just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like where are they, and just having conversation.
Absolutely. I'm super. I want to say proud of you, but that sounds weird, but I'm proud of you for doing that, because honestly, man, that is amazing. Us at XFL News Hub, one of my coworkers, Evan Wilsmore, he actually arranged a GoFundMe, and we were kind of sharing it around with our website and trying to get that going. And I think he's raised about $500 to distribute to multiple players at this point.
Nice.
So, I mean, we're kind of trying to help as well. And it is a tragic situation. I mean, these guys are stranded, left without places to stay. Some of them are sleeping at the stadium. They haven't really gotten paychecks yet. So a lot of them are stuck there. I mean, it's scary to hear.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's a tough situation. If you hear about any stories, you can always just send them, my way, and I'd definitely love to encourage those guys. And I'm very thankful that I have such a great supporting system, people who support the nonprofit, to be able to afford me that opportunity to help these players in need. So special shout out to the monthly donors and people that support the nonprofit.
With that being said, how can we at my network get involved and help your organization continue to grow and help other players?
Yeah, just spread the message, supporting. This is actually what I started. Part of starting this nonprofit is because I'm in and out of football so much, and I was just in the USFL, but now I'm not getting paid and things of that nature. A part of starting a nonprofit is building this thing so much so where I can do this full time. Like I would love to continue to help athletes and work with athletes full time, but of course that comes with the cost. That comes with raising support and doing different things. And I have experience in that, being a former character coach and team chaplain. I'm doing the same thing that I've always done. I just decided to start my own organization simply because it helps. I'm passionate about it, but in turn, it also helps me, an athlete who is in and out of jobs. Right? I can't keep a job past 2 years, so athletes go through a lot. Especially being a family man. You have to want to go buy a house or buy a new car and stuff. Those people want to see stability, and I haven't been able to do that because I'm chasing my dream. But I know that it's all going to pay off, and it's all paying off even now. If it was to end for me today, and I hope it wouldn't, but if it was to end for me today, I'm very grateful for my football journey, because it's one that I didn't give up, I didn't quit, and people are taking notice, and it's pretty interesting how at 29 years old, I'm getting opportunities that I didn't get when I was 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. 28. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it earlier, but I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, it seems like the USFL has kind of put you guys as players on a pedestal at this point and kind of allowed you to market yourself to the NFL in a better manner than maybe some other leagues in the past. Speak to me about your opportunity with the USFL and how it puts you in front of eyes that you maybe didn't have before.
Anytime you can have such a unique story of coming in to an 0-4 team, and after 4 days of practice, come in and win the first game. And obviously I had a moment where I guess it kind of went viral, where I broke down in tears, and that meant so much to me, personally. It meant so much to the journey. It meant so much to all the times where I thought I was crazy for still thinking that I can go out there and throw a football around. All the times where I dreamed about these things, but yet they weren't coming, to fruition at that time. They were far from it. I've dreamed about this, and after college, during college, and finally to have those moments in the USFL was on a national stage was huge for a guy like me. And I think I even said during the game in one of the interviews, like, I'm here for all the guys who are just like me, and that are still dreaming and still working and still going hard, you know, but the opportunities are not there right now. Yeah, and that's why I wrote that book, Purpose Over Position. You know, I'm not looking to be a world best author or anything. I mostly give that book out for free because I believe that it's a resource to help athletes to keep pressing on and to help them to find and understand their identity outside of sports. And I would choose my story over any, you know, over the story of making it right out of college, because I actually have experience working in the real world. I actually have experience doing other things. So when low points and low moments come in football, I'm able to overcome probably a little bit faster, a little bit better, because my identity is not solely into this, and I know who I am as a person. I know my value. I know my worth. I know that I have a family that loves me, and despite, you know, a bad performance or a bad game, and ultimately, I think that helps me become a better player, though, because I don't go out there with all this tension. Oh, I got to make it. I got to do it. I got to do it. Most players in these leagues, I've played in about 4 leagues, and most players have that same stress and tension. Man, I got to make this catch, or, you know, I'm not going to get to go to the NFL, or I got to make this throw, or, you know, the scouts are not going to, you know, come. No, go play for the love. I love playing ball. Like, I enjoy it. There's nothing like it. And I play because I love this game. And I think I'm pretty talented too.
I would agree. So I'm going to back up just a little bit from the USFL stuff. But you mentioned a league that I was not very familiar with back in 2019. It's called Your Call Football. And you actually played for Solomon Wilcots, best known as analyst on TV. Tell me about your time in this league. I mean, I consider myself a football nerd, but this one kind of slipped under my radar at the time.
Yeah, Your Call Football was a unique experience. It was the perfect experience for me because I had a lot going on. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and I had to leave like in month 8, and I would fly home every week, and it was only a 5-week series, a 5-week commitment, 4 games, 2 teams, Team Grit and Team Grit, and I can't think of another team right now. But anyway, I was a part of Team Grit. That's why I remember us. But it was a 2-team battle and show. And we actually were at the Jacksonville Jaguars facility. We used their facilities to play our games. And that was pretty cool because that was my first time in a NFL stadium, getting locker room, getting dressed. And, you know, in my mind, I'm like purpose over position. Like, okay, even though I'm not with the Jaguars, like this is, you know, there's something great that's going to come from this, you know, like in my mind, I'm preparing myself as if I was in the NFL, you know, and I was using Your Call Football to prepare myself like, hey, I'm here. And, you know, it was definitely a great opportunity. We ended up going 3-1. You know, it wasn't an official MVP sent out, but I think if you would ask anybody in the league, I'm pretty sure I probably would have won the MVP of that league. Certainly was one of the top players in that league, and it was really cool. So the fans got to call the plays, and you know, it was a technology involved where you know, it's just like when you're playing a video game Madden and you go to coach's suggestion, you got 3 boxes that comes up. So our coach on the sideline would have an iPad, and he would select the 3 plays that he wants. And the fans, the majority of the vote wins. So a majority of that one play, whoever, you know, however many fans voted majority, we would run that play. And so it was cool because fans got to understand situational football. They got to understand, like, hey, we don't want to just throw it on 3rd down. We even did some interviews, you know, kind of helping the fans, like, hey, I want to throw the ball. So I think the fans were very nice to me in terms of playbook and play calling. And we had success. We ended up losing the last game, but the first 3 games were unbelievable games.
That's awesome. Like I said, it kind of slipped under the radar for me, but we have another league these days, the FCF, that's very much the same that I love. So I'm kind of disappointed that I missed out on Your Call Football back in the day.
Yeah, one of the differences between your call and FCF, I would like to think that we kind of help, kind of build the FCF. But one of the biggest differences, we actually played like on a full field. It was, a 120-yard field. It wasn't like an indoor deal or anything like that. It was real. It was legit, like outdoor football. So I thought it was cool. And all the games are actually on YouTube if you ever want to catch them. You type in Your Call Football Game 1 or Your Call Football Game 2. And all the games are on there if anybody ever want to catch them. It was pretty cool.
Definitely. No guarantees, but I'm probably going to be sharing those out on the website in the next couple of days. I didn't realize they were on YouTube, so definitely will be probably digging those up for you.
Yes, sir.
In 2020, I was not aware of this, but you actually got signed by their first rebirth of the XFL. You were signed by the DC Defenders. You played for one of my favorite NFL coaches, Pep Hamilton. What was your time under Hamilton like, and is he truly the quarterback guru he's made out to be?
Yeah, it was definitely a cool experience to be with the DC Defenders. I worked my tail off to get the respect to even be there. I think it's one of those deals where, XFL was looking for really big names at the quarterback position. And at the time, my name wasn't like a big name, but definitely had some connections. And me playing in the Your Call football experience actually afforded me, because I played so well, I believe that kind of afforded me the opportunity to get picked up by the DC Defenders. But, for me, it was never really an opportunity to fully compete, for the starting role or anything like that. So, I definitely, I was disappointed in that during my time there, because I really felt like every time I got in, we did some really good things in the scrimmages that we had. But it was a learning experience, and it was a professional experience. And when you come to the NFL, you don't get those first team reps or anything like that. Everything is not sweet, even if you're a first rounder. I was just at the Pittsburgh, and they, the GM and everything were mentioning that they're having a hard time getting their first round of some reps. So, every situation is different. And for me at the DC Defenders, it definitely was something that it was a building point, and it was a confidence booster to know that, hey, man, I belong, and I feel as though my skill set has just continued to increase more and more every year.
Agreed. So the following season in 2021, you end up playing for the Alphas in the Brian Woods-led Spring League. Given that stats are nearly impossible to find for that league at this point, how did your season go?
Season went well. So I actually started off on the Alphas for the first 4 games, and very interesting experience because I actually led the league in touchdowns the first 3 weeks, I believe. However, I only played about 25% of the snaps. So frustration a little bit, not really understanding why that was the situation or the case. But I later talked to the coach, and he revealed to me that, again, those conversations about being an athletic quarterback, or, being an athletic quarterback kind of came up, and also my age came up, and he felt as though I didn't have an NFL future. So he only played me like 20% or 25% of the snaps, and very unfortunate because, again, I led the league in touchdowns. I literally would get in maybe 3 drives a game, and we would score. And somehow I ended up in the end zone. And in fact, we had 2 really close games, and he would trust me enough to play in the 4th quarter and to kind of like go and win the game. So there was a couple times where I actually had to go and win the game or seal the deal. However, for whatever reason, that was his words that he used, and is pretty interesting. But that's my story, and that's my life. That's my journey. So I embrace it now. It's nothing to get discouraged about. I simply embrace it. So I ended up playing there for 4 games, for 4 games. And then I went to another team, and I played under Coach Terry Shea. So that was really, really cool experience because Coach Shea embraced me. And Coach Shea has coached in the league. And when I got there, so they had 2 quarterbacks to go down. And, I saw that it might have been a better opportunity for me on the other team. And it was kind of like USFL. We all stayed in the same hotel. We all saw each other every day. So it was kind of like an easy transaction. So my coach for the Alphas, he asked me if I wanted to go to that team. I said, yes, I would definitely love to take on that challenge. And it's pretty interesting. Coach Shea's team was 0-4, and it's kind of the same way that the USFL happened. So I believe that God has just a mysterious way of working. And so I ended up going to Coach Shea's team, and him and I are really great friends. In fact, one of the players that I helped out with MLFB, it was one of the players on his team because he knows about my nonprofit. And but anyway, we had a lot of success. It was my first time. I was actually able to start and play the majority of the game. That league was set up where you wanted to get everybody an opportunity. So I was able to start and play the whole game. And the first week I was there, after 4 days of practice again, we didn't win. We lost by 1 point to the #1 team that ended up winning the championship. And it was the best offensive performance that Coach Shea's team had, and they were, it was the #1 team, so that was pretty impressive. And I think Coach Shea, I think I ended up going 19-24 and threw for like 241 yards, 2 touchdowns that game, and it was like, that was an opportunity. One of the first opportunities that a coach said, "Here, I'm giving you the playbook. You go do it." And I was able to show up big time. And then the second game, we played against the #2 team, and they were really tough on defense, and we lost in triple overtime. So Coach Shea's team, they only scored 20 points in 4 games before me getting there. They scored 20 points in 4 games, and so they were struggling. And then when I got there, we ended up scoring 20 points in the first game there. So it was a great opportunity, and I believe that opportunity afforded me more film and more opportunity to show the USFL that I'm worthy enough.
Absolutely. So shout out to Terry Shea, who, by the way, I mean, if we talked about the MLFB, Terry Shea paid for a lot of his players' hotel rooms out of his own pocket. So shout out to Coach Shea. Yeah. Just a hell of a man. I mean, not a lot of people would do that, and he went above and beyond for his players. And now we're hearing that he reached out to you to get some help for his guys as well. So again, just a great coach.
Terry Shea is awesome. In fact, we've had many conversations about me playing in MLFB under him. I was his guy before I got signed to the USFL. I was kind of on my way to the MLFB as well. So, definitely very blessed by Terry Shea, and he's an awesome man. And he's somebody that I reach out to every time I get a workout or opportunity. He's someone that I text and thank him for allowing me the opportunity.
Agreed. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you have built some of these relationships, because that's what football is really all about at the end of the day, in my mind, is the brotherhood that you get with your fellow players, coaches, executives, owners. It's a different atmosphere than any other work environment, I would say.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to play some highlights from your USFL career, because we're about to finally start speaking about your USFL career.
Cool.
So this is actually off of your YouTube channel. I apologize for robbing you for your highlights, but since I'm speaking with you, I wanted to show your highlights.
All as well.
So in 2022, Brian Woods abandons the TSL and reforms the USFL. Were you immediately interested in the league when it popped up?
Absolutely, immediately interested. I thought that, because I played in the spring league, that, it would be not easy, but it would be, my name would be on the list and everything, but I had to work my tail off to even get on the list. Yeah, I was actually told by the GM of the league that they felt like they had better guys than me. So I wasn't on the list at all until like the coach, one of the coaches for the Maulers, knew about me, and I think it was just their decision to bring me in, and so that's how I got in.
That's amazing. Which coach did you have a connection with, if you don't mind me asking?
John Thomason, JT is what we call him. He's a quarterback coach, and he actually coached at my high school back in the 90s. And so I didn't know him personally, but one of my high school coaches played for him at Hillside High School back in the 90s. And I saw the connection, and I was like, hey, can you reach out to him for me? And blah, blah. And next thing you know, it ended up working out. So I'm very grateful. Very grateful for Hillside High School and his stop in the 90s.
That's amazing. You know, one of my questions that I actually pulled out of this, because I had so many questions for you, was that the players that Hillside produced, they've produced a lot of professional level players, including former USFL players. And I did not realize that your Hillside connection is what led to you to the USFL. So technically, they're still putting players in the pro leagues even to this day.
Yes, sir. Go Hornets, Bull City. They're starting camp and starting the season up soon. So I expect big things from my Hillside Hornets.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So with all the work that you had to do to get into the USFL, were you in the draft class initially, or was this a situation where you didn't get the opportunity till later in the season?
I didn't get an opportunity till later in the season. You know, I got a draft contract or whatever, but they knew who they were already targeting. I was nowhere on that list, and I later found out that as well when I was told that they think they have better guys ahead of me and everything. So yeah, I was nowhere near, but I would somehow I got a hold to some contacts, and I would reach out to people. I don't have an agent, so God is my agent, and that's kind of how I go about it, and just by faith. And so sometimes he leads me to reach out to people at the right time, and people kind of know your name. So I definitely, I reached out to the commissioner, the GM, and different people, and send out emails to different coaches. And, you got to cast a wide net. And when you cast a wide net, you might get one. And I've been able to see that same type of thing through the NFL as well. Sending out text messages and emails, and sometimes you'll get a response, and that's kind of what has happened.
That's amazing. Like, I didn't realize that it was you on your own accord going around trying to find connections to get into the league. That's awesome. I mean, a lot of players I talk to at times, they'll get discouraged, they're not getting looks or whatever it may be. But I mean, this is just proof right here that you just need to keep at it, keep working, keep trying to find connections, keep networking, because eventually somebody's going to see what you can do and put you in the position to give you an opportunity to start.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Last year, Lamar Jackson went down with injury. It's on my Twitter. Lamar Jackson went down. Tyler Huntley, I believe that he had COVID, and they were down quarterbacks. And I think they ended up signing Josh Johnson to come in and kind of save the day, in which he had a really good game, threw for like 300 plus yards that game. But I actually showed up at the Ravens facility last year. I don't know, it was probably September, October sometime, and I just showed up. And they're the closest team to me, so that's why I showed up. I probably wouldn't drive to California or anything like that. But I showed up, and nothing happened, but a lot happened. I tell people nothing happened in the physical, but a lot happened. Because it was so cool when I got the opportunity to go and work out for them, and I received all great feedback. Kind of probably that emergency quarterback situation. But anyway, it was so cool going through the gates this year and knowing that your name is on the list. Last year, my name was not on the list, and I was like, hey, who can I work out in front of? And they said, sorry, baby, your name is not on the list, the security lady. And I certainly understand I didn't fight it at all, but a year later, look what can happen. And I'm proof of it. And that's why purpose over position means so much to me. Last year I wasn't in a position to have my name on the list or to get these different calls, but this year I am because of the work that I've put in. So yeah, it's definitely rewarding and gratifying.
That's an amazing story. That's an amazing story. I'm glad that we got to share that, and hopefully people hear that, because that is something that in my mind is more encouraging than the path of a D1 athlete that goes right into the NFL with, no bumps in the road. A man who had to work for everything that he's been given. In my mind, that's a lot more inspiring.
I like to think that I'm living out a movie right now, and I'm trying to make it the best movie possible. So just got to keep going, keep pressing, and we'll have a good ending soon.
I can imagine. So how did the opportunity come about with the Maulers? I mean, did you know they had any interest prior to getting signed, or was it a situation where all of a sudden the connection came up, you reached out, and it almost immediately panned out?
Yeah, actually, I was at that tough place where I was watching every game, and of course the story came out where I was writing in my notebook and stuff like that, and which that's what I would do. Watch every game, and I seen that the Maulers were struggling offensively. Didn't know the situation or why exactly, but I noticed that, so I kept my eyes close to the Maulers specifically, and I had that one contact that I could reach out to, and after about the fourth week, I was kind of getting discouraged and like, man, I need to find a job. I need to, I put kind of all my eggs in going to the USFL. And, I was like, hey, I'm training for this. This is what we're doing this year. And when it wasn't happening, I was very discouraged. And anyway, I was getting ready to actually take a job in college football. And when I did that, when I made that decision, I pretty much told myself that I wasn't coming back. That once I make this decision, this is a career decision that can set me up for the future. And this is it. And the whole time in my mind, I was like, man, I can't believe I'm about to make this decision. And literally, like that same day, that evening, I received a email from Coach Tomlinson saying, hey, pick up your phone. Our GM is he's gonna give you a call soon. And it was just so divine timing because I was literally on the phone, accepting the job. And I actually told him that, hey, I'm ready to move forward with the job offer. And he was like, okay, give us a couple of days so we can put together a package and everything. And literally that day, I got called. So just such divine timing. And it makes me, it helps me to know that God is with me, and that that I still have some years in this game. And yeah, so it was definitely a cool story. But yeah, it came about, and obviously I got here. They ended up getting rid of one quarterback, and I think he ended up getting signed to another team. And so it was me and one other quarterback, and we were just competing. And I didn't think that I would play the first game that I was there after 4 days. But before the game, they told me, hey, be ready in the third quarter. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is happening. Well, it was the third drive that they put me in. It wasn't the third quarter. It was the third drive of the game in the first quarter. And I started having some success, and the offense, started leading us down there, and we started rolling, started clicking, and ended up throwing a game-winning touchdown, which was amazing. So yeah, it was. I think many people have seen that story or might have seen it, so I don't have to over dramatize that. But it was a great and special moment that I'll always cherish.
Well, I mean, if you listen to that highlight, I mean, you can hear the elation in your voice. I mean, you're mic'd up on that play, and you just go nuts right after you hit the touchdown pass. And it's cool to hear, because especially after hearing everything you went through to get to that point, I mean, you were, steps away from walking away from football for good. And then you're, the next week you're playing substantial time in the USFL on national TV and, winning the first game for the Pittsburgh Maulers.
Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, did you enter your first USFL game with a huge chip on your shoulder after everything that had happened up to that point?
No, I don't play with all of that tension anymore. And I know what it's like not to have the game, and I'd rather have the game. So I go out there and I have joy. I have fun. I try to obviously complete every pass and make wise decisions. But rarely do I go out there with this huge chip on my shoulder, because I found out that I don't play well that way. I play well when I'm loose, I'm relaxed, and that little boy that signed up to play football when I was 4 years old, he just had joy. It wasn't a chip on his shoulder, or I can do this, or I'm better than you, or anything. It was just to go and have fun, go and have joy, and just do what you love, man. It's pretty unique that in this world of football, you can get paid to play the game that you fell in love with when you was 4 years old. And I find that extremely gratifying and just a blessing. So, yeah, I just go have joy.
I love that mindset. I love it. That's how the game should be played in my mind. So how did it feel to immediately find victory in your first game with the team after signing?
Victory to help Coach Kirby Wilson get his first win as a head coach. I don't really think I truly understood or really understood the magnitude of that moment. But that was his first head coaching victory. And to be the quarterback, to be able to deliver a coach who's been coaching for many years was very special. And, I wasn't winning for myself. I was winning for the team. I was winning for the guys that are at home that are hoping and wishing and dreaming for opportunities that I had. I was playing for my teammates, my new teammates who don't even know me. In fact, probably didn't even believe in me at that point. You know what I mean? And that's what I was playing for. And that's what the win meant so much to me. The win meant so much because it was about the journey. It was about me getting injured in 2015 and not really having an opportunity to display my skills right before the draft. And I had dreams to do bowl games, to be a part of a bowl game, to go to some facility in Florida and train and do what everybody does right before the draft. I never had that opportunity. Never got that opportunity. And, I'm a hardworking man who has to provide for my family. Wife is stay-at-home mom. So, well, now she's in dental school, but she used to be. I had to provide, but I also still had this dream that wouldn't leave me. And that was certainly hard to navigate. It was hard to navigate trying to make funds for your family, but also trying to find time to still train. So there's a lot of times that I do in-home workouts because that's the best that I can do. And so all those YouTube trainers and people of that nature, I sincerely thank those guys, because that's a part of my journey. I don't have that pretty story of, being at a facility, grinding full time and doing all of this. No. So, those tears and that win, all of that was packed in that, and it meant so much to me.
Absolutely. Well, so with that being said, I'm going to leave you with one last question, and I have to ask it. What is your relationship like with Kirby Wilson? I mean, we saw multiple times this season where you're kind of on and off the bench at the drop of a hat. Is this everything the media builds it up to be, or heated moments and frustrating times?
Yeah, I think anytime you have two new people coming together in the middle of a season that has already kind of been shaky, right? It's not like Coach Kirby and I had an opportunity to build relationship in training camp, and I got to know exactly what he's thinking on this play, or I got to know exactly what he's thinking in this type of situation. So a lot of times those things were going on in the midst of the plays, right? So this is my first time seeing the response in this reaction, or seeing what our thoughts is in this, and it's his first time seeing me, like, what's my response, and different things like that. So I think Coach Wilson and I definitely have a building relationship, and one that's is not a bad relationship at all. I think one time I ended up getting pulled in the game because not frustration, but, you know, just competitiveness. You know, it's not necessarily frustration. I pride myself on being a great character guy, and you know, so those things will come and go. But Coach Wilson, he's a great guy. He really cares, and you know, obviously, year one was a challenge. But I think, you know, as the future goes on, that it will just continue to get better and better. So I'm very happy and pleased with my relationship with Coach Wilson, and I'm extremely grateful that he brought me in and gave me an opportunity, gave me a shot. And even after, you know, being sat down and not playing and then going back, you know, it's about just taking advantage of those opportunities. I'm not in control of all of that. What I am in control of is my play. You definitely, as a quarterback, you want to get in rhythm, though. You want to have some, you know, some, you know, shots and different things of that nature. But it comes with us growing together, coming to know each other, and putting together a good product. So I'm definitely excited about the future for the Pittsburgh Maulers.
Agreed. I am as well. And one of the big reasons why is because I'm excited to see you get a full off season in their offense and, you know, build those relationships you spoke about with the receivers, the coaches, etc., and get the opportunity to go through a full off season and be the starting quarterback. With that being said, I'm going to let you get out of here, man. I appreciate you giving me an hour of your time. This was tremendously fun to hear about your career and your nonprofit, your book. Again, that's Purpose Over Position. So you can definitely Google that. I found the book immediately. It's all over the place if you want to purchase a copy. But definitely appreciate you coming on, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. And one last thing about the book, if you want to purchase it personally and get a signed autograph or anything, is vadlee.org. So you can definitely check us out. But thank you so much for having me on, and go Maulers, go USFL.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm glad we got your unique perspective on how the USFL helped you continue your career. So joining me tonight is a very special guest. This man is directly responsible for sending 2 players to the NFL in basically the past week, if I'm not mistaken. He is none other than defensive line coach Rick Courtright. Thank you for joining me today, Coach, and how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So as I told you off camera a moment ago, I'm extremely excited about this interview. I've been looking forward to hearing a coach's perspective for a long time, basically since I started doing this interview series. So I'm really excited to speak with you tonight.
Great. I'm looking forward to it as well. Especially a guy that's an Eagles fan. You don't get to talk to too many of those.
How did you originally get into the sport of football, and what about the game leads to the passion that you still have to this day?
Wow. When I was a little 6-year-old kid growing up in Miami, Florida, I started to play Little League football. My mom and dad, that was something that was really big. You know, they wanted to get us involved with athletics. I have 3 brothers. I got 1 older and 2 younger. So we all played sports. We were always doing some kind of athletic activity, and fortunately, our folks really encouraged it. They took every opportunity they could to get involved and to make sure that we had every opportunity to go out and experience all those different things. Football kind of came naturally to me, and that was one of the things I fell in love with at an early age. And so, just loved playing it. It took me to a whole nother place when I was on the field playing it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So was it kind of like a family sport then?
Yeah, it was. You know, at one time in high school, I had 2 of my brothers on the field with me at the same time. And, you know, my dad coached me in Little League. My mom was a nurse by trade. There would be times, you know, small school that I went to, we didn't have a big training staff. So if somebody was hurt, my mom would end up going down there to help out the training staff. So, you know, it was a family affair.
That's amazing. So in doing some research on you, I actually found that you have a Master's of Education and a Bachelor's of Science for Physical Education. Was coaching something that was always in your plan as far as after your football career?
Yes and no. I mean, I was fortunate. The school I went to for my undergrad, they had a huge, their philosophy was they wanted you to get your hands dirty from the jump. So even as a freshman, I was involved in doing some internships with local elementary schools, junior high schools, that kind of thing. I enjoyed coaching and I enjoyed teaching, but I was hoping that my playing career would continue a lot longer than it did. You know, and that's one of those realities. In fact, as I went and pursued my master's, I put an emphasis on some sports psychology stuff during my master's. And that's one of the big things. Football is one of those sports where when you quit, it's over. It's an abrupt change. You know, if you're a basketball player, you can go down to the park. There's always going to be pickup games. You know what I mean? There's going to be stuff that you can do with a lot of other sports. Football, contact football especially, when it's over, it's over. I mean, you find that out pretty quickly. And so that really, it wasn't until later on when I was like, you know what, I need to think about what I'm going to do when I quit playing. And that was when the coaching became a real viable option for me.
That makes sense. I mean, you put it very, very well right there. It is definitely a sudden change when you do ultimately decide that you're going to get out of playing, and it's immediate, you know, and there's no coming back really. I mean, there's the unicorns, I guess, out there like Terrell Owens that can come back after 15 years, but I don't think that's the norm for sure.
No, I don't think so either. I think you're absolutely right on that one.
Absolutely. So during your career, you primarily played linebacker, correct?
Absolutely. You know, I can't ever remember not playing linebacker. When I did, I eventually, actually, I tried out for the USFL in 1983, and was invited at that point to go to two clubs. One was the Arizona outfit, and the other was the San Antonio team. And at that point, they were going to change my position. I was going to go. I had been an inside and an outside linebacker all the way through my career, and they were going to move me to a strong safety. And the other part of the equation was I was a long snapper, and so I had the best long snapping numbers at the combine and at the tryout camp that I was at. And so that was one of the big selling cards for me, was that I could be a long snapper and then play strong safety.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you're able to coach a position that you never played before. I mean, I've seen that you coach defensive backs, offensive line, tight ends, defensive line, special teams. And in fact, it seemed like you almost never coached linebackers for the duration of your career. So how is it you are able to adapt to all these different positions?
Well, I go back to, you know, I worked for Denny Green. As you mentioned earlier, my degree is in education, and the actual degree was called pedagogy, which is the science and study of teaching and coaching. When I was with Denny, when I was with Don James at the University of Washington, these are some of the guys that I learned from. They were my mentors. You learn how to coach and how to teach, and you learn that your classroom, it's going to go out there and it's going to be on the grass. Sometimes it's going to be in a meeting room. Sometimes it might be in a weight room. You know what I mean? Your classroom is going to go and be in a lot of different scenarios. And so you learn how to teach and coach regardless of what the techniques and the fundamentals are. You can learn those. But you learn now how to teach and coach, which is all about developing relationships with those players that you have so that they trust you, that the information you're giving them is going to help them improve and get where they want to go. And so that's how I was able to, you know, coach those different positions.
That's interesting. I mean, it seems like something that is fairly common in the football world, where you'll play one position during your career and then you end up coaching another. And it's always amazed me to see that and how guys are able to adapt to that. So I appreciate you lending some insight there.
Absolutely.
So you actually began your career at the high school level, correct?
Yeah, actually a 9-man football program in Minnesota.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you were able to make the jump so quickly from the high school level into the college coaching level.
Again, it goes back, you know, I started, like I said, 6 years old. I had some phenomenal coaches coming up. And it's part of my philosophy that I think we need to give our best coaches to the young players that we're trying to develop. You know, oftentimes, and it's common, and I understand it, we think that the best coaches are in the NFL. some of the best coaches I've ever seen coach Little League. They coach junior high. They coach high school. And that's not taking anything away from the NFL coaches. Those guys, I mean, they're masters of their craft as well. But to take and coach a young kid, I mean, that takes somebody that's really special. And I was fortunate to have experienced that. And so I learned from like an early age how coaching works. I mean, you got to have a progression. You got to have a philosophy, and it has to apply. And, you know, I saw that from a lot of coaches all the way out, coming up from Little League into junior high, high school. I had some of the best coaches that I could even think of. And I still use some of the things that they taught me back then in what I'm doing now. You know, and it gets into the value of mentorship, which is another big deal in the coaching world. You know, we are in an age of specialization, and I get that. But at the same time, I think we've got to be able to broaden out and be more generalized and be able to coach and teach and get out on the grass. You know, I know information, data, and all that kind of stuff, analytics, all that stuff is great. But you can't beat that relationship that goes on when you're out there on the field or in the classroom working with that player, and the light goes on, and you guys, I mean, things just really start clicking. I can't explain that any better than that, but that sends chills up my spine.
I love that. That's awesome. Clearly, I mean, you're a football guy to the core. I mean, you're taking pride just in teaching players. So, I mean, it's amazing. That's the kind of coaches that we need at this level, in my personal opinion. But after moving to the college level in 1991, it took you just 5 years to find a coordinator role. It was just like you just kept progressing immediately. What was it like running an entire unit for the first time at the college level?
It was exciting. Again, you know, you're going to hear me talk about several of the guys that I learned from. And Don James, Coach James, I shouldn't even refer to him as Don James. Coach James was a huge impact on my career. One of the big things he stressed was being accountable for the performance of your players. Again, that's not something that is really common these days, but I took that to heart. So when I was given responsibilities by him and he gave me some, I was like, I'm gonna do the darndest that I can with this job, because I want to make sure that these guys are successful, because he's going to hold me accountable, and I want to be held accountable for that. You know what I mean? So that philosophy, that approach, and teaching from fundamentals and technique standpoint, that allowed me to get in there and be able to be a coordinator to where I'm orchestrating the whole thing. I had great assistants to work with. I had great players. They made the job easier. They help you to. You cannot put you know, a value on the amount of having great players. They are the best teachers for young coaches like I was at that point. They taught me a lot about, here's what we need to hear from you, coach. Gotcha. I'll give you that, and then things start rolling. Like I said, it kind of just builds, and the snowball just keeps getting bigger as it rolls.
I could see that, definitely. So you almost immediately go from running a special teams unit to a defensive unit, again with the progression. And you coached your old position with Murray State University as well. I mean, at this point, how have you grown as a coach and a potential play caller since joining the coaching world as a high school coach?
We do a lot of things in the coaching world, and we call them clinics. So I would love, like, there's a American Football Coaches Association. They have an annual convention every year. I would go to that. And there's a lot of stuff going on where guys are trying to pass out resumes and doing all of that normal networking stuff. All that's fine and good. I would try to grab guys who I thought they were doing stuff that I wanted to learn more about, and I would go and sit in a corner, or we'd go sit down somewhere. We'd be drawing stuff up on napkins. I mean, we would make appointments. Like, eventually it got to the point where we did clinics because we were running similar defenses. I spent time back in the day with Coach Dick Tomey, you know, and his coordinator and his staff. They were running the Arizona Flex defense at the time. It was called the Arizona Swarm. You know, I mean, that was what we ran at Idaho. And so I would spend as much time as I can learning that defense. Well, then I started to run what we call the G defense, which is what we ran at Washington while I was there. So then I started going to clinics with guys that we're running the G. We're having the G clinic defense, you know. Bill Clay, I mean, West Army was there, you know, Oklahoma State. I spent many days in Stillwater visiting with Coach Clay. I mean, so that was how I got better as a coach, was by just being around, absorbing, learning, listening, and picking up those kinds of tips from those guys who had gone before.
I love it. I love it. I'm a firm believer that if you want to be the best, you train with the best. So that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, that's something that I've always followed throughout my career. So it definitely makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned before, after 13 seasons as a collegiate coach, you end up in the NFL coaching under Denny Green. How did you end up coming into that staff?
Well, back up to the first year I was at Western Illinois. I know you've seen that information. When I was at Western Illinois, I was centrally located. I could drive over to Indianapolis, which is where the combine was held, and I could also drive down to Mobile, Alabama, which is where the Senior Bowl is every year. And so I made those two treks. I was fortunate. The head coach that I worked for allowed me to do that, and I would weave in some recruiting, you know, visits and different things along the way. And it was when I was down in Mobile at a Senior Bowl, I met a guy named Richard Solomon. Well, Richard Solomon had been Denny Green's assistant head coach when he was at the Vikings. Fast forward to 2003, I had 3 different DB coaches while I was at Western Illinois. Each one of the guys that I had left to go on to better situations. And I get that. That's what we're there for, is helping people to move on. One had gone to the University of Utah. One went to go coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then I needed to hire one to replace him. Well, I called up Richard Solomon, and he came and coached secondary for me there in 2003 when we were at Western Illinois together. So when Coach Green gets offered the job at the Arizona Cardinals, I'm driving back from the coaches convention with Solly. He gets a phone call, and he's like, "Rick, you ready to go? Let's go." So that's how it works.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story to hear. So you spend the next 8 seasons serving in many capacities on that staff, under Denny Green and then later Ken Whisenhunt as well, correct?
Right. It was actually 7. I was there 2004 through 2010.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 2011. I apologize.
No, it was the spring of 2011 when there was a change made. So no worries. But yeah, 3 years with Coach Green and 4 years with Coach Whisenhunt. Gotcha.
Did you learn anything during that time under Green or Whisenhunt that you still carry with you to this day?
100%. Coach Green, and forgive me if this is incorrect, but I have been told, you know, we were in the Super Bowl in 2009 with the Arizona Cardinals. Well, of the 22 starters on that field, 19 of those guys were either signed or drafted by Coach Green. That was one of the big things. Great coach, but he was also a great personnel mind. And I got to work hand in hand. I was fortunate. I'd get a phone call in my office, and it would be Coach Green. He'd say, "Hey, Rick, you got a second?" "I absolutely do, Coach." I'd be right down there. He'd have me doing projects for him on personnel. And so in that, by doing those kinds of things, as well as the coaching part, I developed a really close relationship also with Rod Graves, our general manager. And, you know, I got to see like kind of the way Coach Green and Rod built the team. And that was huge. I mean, evaluating talent and that type of thing is a big thing for a coach nowadays. We want to get anybody better. Whoever you give me, I'll coach them. I'll help them to get better and improve. But if we can start with somebody maybe that's a higher up on that curve, that obviously is you know, to our advantage as well.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So after your time with Arizona, maybe your time with Rod Graves kind of assisted you in this position, but you end up in a scouting role with the Rams, correct?
Yeah, actually, the connection with the Rams was Steve Loney. Steve Loney was our offensive line coach our last year at the Cardinals. He had been on the staff there with Coach Spags, and so they like to have former coaches do what they call advanced scouting and then various personnel things for them. And so I got a call in like late June. I was actually over in Europe because I've had relationships with clubs in Europe for about 12 years. And I was over there monkeying around with them. And I got a call from Coach Spags, "Hey, you want to come back and do our advanced scouting?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So anyway, that was the role that I had for the Rams in that 2011 season. I would go in and do an advanced scouting And then that week after I had been out watching that opponent, I would be up in the press box on the headsets to the coaches for that following game when we would be playing that opponent. And it was a great opportunity, again, to continue my learning. Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator, Coach Spags was the head coach. And I mean, it was just, again, more development, more learning, more seeing how things work and how guys do stuff. So it was huge.
Agreed. I mean, you've coached around some of the biggest names in the NFL. I mean, it's amazing to hear you rattle off some of the head coaches and defensive coordinators and all this stuff that you've coached around. But in 2012, I found it kind of funny that you actually reunited with Denny Green with the Sacramento Mountain Lions and got your first taste of spring football. What was the UFL like?
The UFL I thought it was a great opportunity. In fact, Denny had been the head coach of the Sacramento Mountain Lions. He resigned, and I should call him Coach Green. I shouldn't call him Denny. I apologize, Coach. Rest in peace. So he had resigned. There were some issues, if you read about it, some financing issues and different things like that. So they hired Turk Schoner to be the head coach, and then Chuck Bresnahan was our defensive coordinator. I got a call as a special teams coordinator and then DB coach to go work with them. We had 4 games out of 8 that we were able to play that year, and then it ended up kind of being closed out due to some financial constraints. But in those 4 games and in the couple of weeks of preseason, I was able to work with guys, develop guys. All 4 of my starting DBs signed contracts off of that team. My kicker got a tryout, and then the punter that I had went to the Cleveland Browns and played or punted for them for a while too. So, again, it was an opportunity to be around guys, help them get better, and coach football, which is, at the end of the day, that's what I do. I mean, I just love to coach guys and be a part of their development, and like I said earlier, work with them to help improve and develop them as they get better as players.
Agreed. Makes perfect sense. It was kind of interesting to see that you had that UFL in your background, because I know Bart Andrews does as well. And I'm sure you guys aren't the only ones. I'll have to do some more digging on that, because I followed the league. I was an Omaha Nighthawks fan, which is where originally kind of Andrews came on my radar in the first place. But, it's interesting to see how a lot of the coaches carry over in these spring leagues occasionally.
You bet.
So from 2013 to 2015, you were back to assisting scouting departments, kind of doing the same type of advanced scouting, correct?
No, what my role was in 2013 through 15 with the Jets, I was considered what they call a combine scout. There are 2 different consortiums in the NFL. The National Scouting Service, or NSC, they do the combine, okay? And so most clubs, I think at one point it was like 23 clubs were a part of that. And what we would do was I had the area of the West. And so I would go out and I would prepare guys that were maybe rising juniors, and I would say, okay, here's the report. And I would read that report then in the summer to all of the teams that were a member of that consortium. And so then they would actually plan their fall scouting based on what I did as a combine scout for my area. We also worked the combine and did different things there at the combine as well as combine scouts. And so that was what I did for 2 years with the Jets. And I had the West. And so my areas where I had the states of Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. And then I would cross-check, like I would go into Canyon, Texas. I watch Ethan Westbrook coming out of West Texas A&M, and that was one of my cross checks that I did. And then I would go as far as like all up and down the I-5 corridor, all over California, Oregon, and Washington and Montana as well. So
that's amazing. I'm actually a Colorado native, so it's kind of crazy to hear that you had Colorado in that whole consortium there.
Yeah.
So in 2015, I saw you were actually hired by the Major League of Football once again to serve as a defensive coordinator / linebackers coach.
Yeah.
However, much like what's going on this season, never quite got off the ground. How did the 2016 shutdown occur for you guys? Were you already in training camp at that point?
No, I did multiple tryout camps. we did them throughout kind of like the late, in that September, October timeframe of 15. And then we started looking at film and started to pick players in January, February, and then they shut it down basically the end of February. But yeah, I was working with Dave Campo. He was going to be the head coach, and we were slated to be part of the Arkansas organization. And so I did camps. I did camps in Oregon, a couple of them in California, went back to the Memphis area. We did one in Memphis. And that was a big part of what I was doing at that time, was trying to put together a roster with Coach Campo.
Absolutely. That must have been an interesting situation to live through as far as a coaching perspective. I mean, you're prepared to build a roster, and then all of a sudden it just never quite gets off the ground. But unfortunately, it is one of those things.
Yeah, as coaches, I mean, I don't concern myself with a lot of the business part of it. I try to leave that to those experts, and I just try to focus on the players and doing the job that I can do in terms of providing my best assessments and that kind of thing. So it was unfortunate because there's always a need, as we found out with the USFL. I mean, there's a lot of good players out there. They just need opportunities to continue to show what they can do and hone their craft.
Absolutely. Off the top of my head, I believe we're at 29 players signed by the NFL at this point. So obviously the NFL is paying attention. They're watching. They're seeing these guys develop. They're seeing the year-over-year progression. So there's obviously a need for these leagues. And like you said, it's filling a need. So it's interesting to see, and it will be interesting to see going forward into the next season as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of as an interesting note, when I was at the Cardinals, we had a young guy who we sent over into, at that time, it was the World League. And he was the sack leader in the World League. And Antonio Smith was his name, out of Oklahoma State. And so, it kind of changed our perspective in terms of, what to do with the guy. And when he came back, he became an integral part of what we were doing there. So.
Is that the same Antonio Smith that played for like a decade?
Yes, it is. Houston.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was not aware of the fact that he played in another league. Interesting.
Yeah, we sent him. I mean, we drafted him. I want to say it would have been in the 2005. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was 2005. And, just he needed more time on the job, and he got it over there in the World League.
Interesting. I'll have to look that up. For a brief period, you spent some more time in the college level, but ultimately your next chance to coach at the professional level came with the 2022 iteration of the USFL. Did you have any previous connections with the Maulers staff before you were hired?
When I went to the Arizona Cardinals in 2004, January of 2004, I told you about Richard Solomon. So Richard Solomon comes to pick me up at the airport, and in the car is a gentleman by the name of Kirby Wilson. Kirby Wilson, when he was a player, was recruited to the University of Illinois by Richard Solomon. And so, yeah, I have a long history with Coach Wilson. We coached together for 3 years, and love the guy. I think the world of Coach Wilson, and I love his leadership and the way he works. I mean, I'm grateful that he remembered me too when he became a head coach. There's a lot of guys that say, "Hey, I'll give you a call when I have an opportunity." He did it. He gave me a call, and I appreciate that.
That's amazing. You got to love those connections. I mean, networking is obviously very important when it comes to the coaching world, for sure.
Absolutely, 100%.
So I'm going to play a quick highlight. This is actually, well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I mean, it's your defensive line unit was able to do something that most defensive line units can never say. I mean, it's not often that you say that your unit as a defensive line affected the first touchdown of a season for your squad. So I'm going to play the quick highlight of Carlo Kemp forcing a fumble, and then we'll talk about it.
First play. Nope. Go through the 4 verticals. Oh, we had a guy open.
And the turnover scooped up. Jalen McLean set all the way to the end zone. Touchdown, Maulers defense.
All right. So, again, that was Carlo Kemp, the defensive end that just got signed by the Chargers. So what was it like coaching Kemp, and what did you see on that play that allowed him to ultimately get that sack?
Well, first of all, coaching Carlo was just a great young man. He showed up, obviously played at Michigan, played a lot of different positions at Michigan, did a lot of different things. And truth be told, I like seeing that because he's showing a lot of different skills. And he continued to do that for us. You know, we were able to use him in a lot of different ways. One of the things, the guys referred to him as the Energizer Bunny. Carlo would, you know, he just had a motor that wouldn't stop. We were fortunate. We had a lot of guys with motors. And so he was just like one of those guys. I mean, he raised the level of the play around him, of those guys around him. He was very smart player. He was always asking questions, which again I like. I go back to what I said earlier. Those guys are going to guide you and tell you what it is they need to know. And so that was the way Carlo was. I mean, he was asking the right questions at the right time. Had very great insights and all that kind of stuff. So to me, seeing that happen, that's how he played. That's how come that turnover occurred. That was what he had worked for, how he practiced. He had prepared for that. So that was not an accident or an aberration by any stretch of the imagination. That was how he practiced before.
I believe it. I believe it. In fact, of all the guys signed so far, I believe Carlo is one of the guys that has the best chance of actually making a 53-man roster out of camp this year. So it'll be very fun to watch for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this unit you were tasked with coaching had a group of talents from nearly every background. I mean, you had Terry Buckner, a former NFL draft pick who had some off-field issues and ended up in the USFL. You had Carlo Kemp, who was essentially a rookie. He hadn't really played prior to this season. Jeremiah Pharms, who most recently played indoor football, and then also Boogie Roberts, et cetera, et cetera. You arguably had one of the deepest defensive line groups in terms of talent throughout the league. I mean, how do you bring a group of guys like this together and keep them all bought in, even though they may not be starting necessarily?
Well, I have to thank Coach Wilson. First of all, it's when we're looking at film, when we're getting ready for the draft, and when we're starting to get ready to pick players, he was the one that picks the players. He obviously worked with Mr. Johnston and the guys from the USFL, who I got to thank them for doing that as well, because they had to be in the pool to be able to be picked. So, all of those things helped. And then we did our homework. We put our lists together. Again, going back to listening to how Denny developed teams and stuff, there were certain things that you would look for and you wanted to see on a consistent basis. And so that was how I would put my list together. And then I would submit that to Coach Wilson. And then from there, he picked guys based on how he thought they would fit into the Maulers organization. That's a good problem to have, is a lot of good players, as you have alluded to. I like unselfish players. They can't be selfish. They earn playing time by how they perform, and they understood that from the jump. And so when I first stood in front of them, the very first thing I said is, I'm here to help you guys out in any way that I can to get where you want to go. It wasn't about my career or anything else about me. It was about them. One of the big things, and I'll go back to what I learned in my earlier years, going to school and some of the different people that I was able to be mentored by. But Coach James started off, he identified this philosophy, and it's the idea of the power of expectations. I told you that he held us accountable for the performance of our players. Well, he also talked a lot about the power of expectations. And as I went through school and I started to learn that there are names and terms for that kind of thing, I learned that it's called the Pygmalion effect. And it's the idea of people are going to rise to the level of expectation that the leader has for them. And so that's how I operate. I'm going to have high expectations for those that I'm going to be working with. And it helps me then to react and work and relate to them from that perspective, because that's the feedback I want them to get from me. And they're going to give me feedback that's going to kind of continue that, what I call that, feedback cycle, where it's going to keep the expectation level so high that everybody around you is going to rise to that. So once you get that rolling and that culture is there, now those guys understand when I get my opportunity to go out and play, there's a certain expectation that I have to meet. And if I can't, because maybe I'm tired, maybe I've gone 2 series in a row, I need to tap out and get somebody in here who can meet that expectation. And then when I'm ready to go, I'm going to be ready to go and meet that expectation the next time I get out there. So, we kind of create that culture that way. So
I really like that thought process. And I mean, it would make sense. I mean, if you're a player, I mean, you want to succeed, you want to find wins. So, I mean, if you've got another great player coming off the bench when you need a break, then, it's beneficial to everybody in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes, again, Coach James talked about players don't want to screw up. Nobody does. Nobody wants to go out and screw up. And one of the biggest things that leads to maybe breakdowns is fatigue or, whatever. And so they're not interested. They don't want to have their names associated with the da-da-da, you know what I'm saying? When they're the ones that are giving up a big play. And so they're like, no, I want to be on the other end of that. So
Agreed. So speaking of which, on the other end of that, I mean, perfect segue right into the Terry Buckner play. So here's one more highlight for us.
Energy guy. 3rd and 8. Smith, pressure up the middle, down he goes. Terry Buckner with the sack.
So again, just more depth on that defensive line. Buckner was a name that was probably not one of the better known players in the USFL, but again, just another quality player that you had on that defensive line. How do you as a coach go about highlighting plays like these for the players following week? I mean, do you go out of your way to praise them on stuff like this?
100%. We did again, Jaron Horton, Coach Horton, our defensive coordinator, he recognized big plays is what we're about. That's how, good things happen for you on the defensive side of the ball or on the offensive side of the ball. And so we would make a big deal out of recognizing those things, whether it be in the team meeting. Coach Wilson would also do that. And then also in our defensive meetings, we would talk about it again. We would often put them on highlight films to show them in preparation for the next week's game.
Gotcha. Now, do you feel it's easier to, for lack of a better term, put a player on blast for something he did something wrong when you're able to highlight the good plays that he does as well?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I do. However, I'm not big on putting players on blast. Each player is an individual. There's a time and a place and a way to correct them. I go back to what I said earlier. They aren't trying to screw up. And so the way I approach them and the power of expectations, I expect that they want to do well and that they want to go out and be successful and perform at a very high level. And so when something goes wrong, to me, it signals either something was not clear, so maybe I didn't teach something correctly, so I want to go back and revisit and make sure, hey, did I not make this clear with you, or is there something that you didn't understand? And so I try to, not go out there and embarrass the guy. I'll say it like that. I personally, when I was playing, I didn't like to be embarrassed. I don't know that anybody really enjoys that. We've all experienced it. And there's times that I needed it probably too, when I was a young whippersnapper, you know what I mean? But I try to, like I said, I approach these guys as men, and I try to treat them like men and with respect, because respect is a mutual thing and loyalty is a mutual thing. It's a two-way street. And so I feel like that's a big part of my role, is to correct them in a way that they understand and they get it, and that they don't make the same mistake twice, because making the same mistake twice, that tells me something else, okay? So I try to correct them without having to go ahead and unload on them.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, they're going to trust you a lot more if you're not necessarily putting them out in front of everybody else for their mistakes.
Yeah.
So by season's end, your unit as a whole produced 13.5 of the 18 total sacks for your defensive unit. Do you consider this a success, or do you think there's more room for progression into the 2023 season?
I'm going to answer yes to both of those, Sam, and I'll tell you what I mean. Yes, I thought we had success this year with the defensive line. Getting 2 guys signed into the NFL, that tells me that was successful, because a lot of what we were doing was trying to help develop players. One of the other things that I go back to Coach James, I mean, like I said, you're going to hear a lot about Coach James, but he didn't talk about winning and losing. He talked about performing. When we played a game, we played nameless, faceless opponents. We tried to push our own performance higher each and every week. And that's what I stressed with the players that I was coaching on the D-line and as outside linebackers. And so that's where we saw improvement. Every week, guys got better, and you could see it. It showed up, and it manifested itself. And like I said, Carlo and Jeremiah getting opportunities now to play at the highest level possible. Can we do better? That's it. We always can do better. And so we want to keep pushing that bar ever higher. And so that's what the challenge is going to be for those guys that come back and are part of the team for the 2023 season. That's what we're going to be. We're going to be pushing that bar higher, not just every game, but every day in practice. That's how we have to practice. That's how we have to go through a meeting. We have to have meetings with a purpose and intensity. You know, we can't do anything without having a purpose in trying to accomplish something. And that's what we're going to do every time that we get together as a Maulers defensive line.
Definitely. So of those 13.5 sacks I just spoke about, 7 of them walked out the door with Carlo Kemp and Jeremiah Pharms heading to NFL teams. Who are some of the players you look to pick up the slack now that those 2 are gone in 2023?
Well, you know, we've got a couple of guys. You've already talked about Terry Beckner. Unfortunately, Terry's season was cut short with a knee injury. We'd love to see him get healthy and get back. He shows that he has a lot of ability. I would welcome a chance to work with him again if that presents itself. Same thing with Darius Maragni. You know, his season got cut short. He was coming along and very talented, very skilled athlete. And then there's other guys. You know, Nazir Player, Malcolm Howard. Malcolm Howard was moved at the start of our season from inside linebacker to outside linebacker. So he was just learning the position. First time ever playing it. Athletically, he might have been one of the best outside linebackers we had, you know. So excited to see him. We had Eric Asua, another great guy. I mean, pass rush skills. We were working with him to try to enhance his ability to play the run and be a little more stout at setting edges and different things like that. And he was coming around and earning himself more time. So, you know, there's a lot of guys, Boogie, Olive. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw Olive. I was told he was the largest man in the USFL. And I see this guy running down, making tackles downfield, you know, 25 yards down the field. I mean, it's like, that guy, he was another guy that had a motor that wouldn't stop. Same with Boogie, big time player at the point of attack for us at the nose. So we got a lot of guys to work with. We had some guys that came in towards the end of the year that were young, Level, Will, Chris Okoye. I mean, those guys were fun to work with. I only had them for a couple of weeks. I would love to get another opportunity to spend more time around with those guys, you know. Ethan Westbrooks, if he wants to come back, I'd love to have him. I mean, a great veteran presence, you know what I mean? So just I'll work with whoever Coach Wilson gives me to work with, and I'll do my darndest to try to help get them better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to have to show this video to Ethan, by the way. I'm kind of in touch with him on Twitter, so I'll be like, hey, Coach wants you back in Pittsburgh, so let's make it happen. With that being said, I mean, do you believe that losing Jeremiah and Carlo, you guys could essentially walk into next season with the roster that you have and just be completely fine? I mean, I'm sure you probably want to add a couple more pieces for competition, but I mean, you're so deep even right now. I literally had to go back and look and see if you had signed players since the season finished and since Jeremiah and Carlo signed, because there's so many guys left on your roster at the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the guys that are there. And yes, we will always be looking to try to better ourselves if there's a way that we can do that, you know. One of the neat things about the USFL too, and we took advantage of it with signing those two guys, Levell and Will, guys that will be done with their eligibility next spring and that aren't drafted, you know, and aren't in the picture to get drafted. I mean, you know, they start to get an idea after the season what's going on. Those guys would be perfect fits for what we're trying to get done too. So we're constantly looking to see, is there somebody out there that's going to make us better? And you know, again, Coach Wilson does a great job overseeing that and keeping an eye on those kinds of things. And I obviously trust his judgment, and I know that he's got the Maulers' best interest at heart. And I look forward to seeing who he gives me to work with.
This is kind of an off-the-wall question, and I don't know that this is ever necessarily a plan for the USFL, but could you see them ever running like a showcase series similar to what we saw with the XFL?
You know, I suppose, I mean, I'll tell you what, I am impressed with the leadership. Mr. Woods, Mr. Johnston, I thought they did a marvelous job. The way they put that thing together with the plan, you know, I could see them doing a whole lot of different types of things. You know, we were fortunate with the television exposure, and that I mean, our ratings were up there. You know, people loved to watch football in the spring. So I think that they're going to put their heads together, and those guys, they know that part of the business a whole lot better than I do. So I'm anxious to see what they come up with. I imagine they'll be thinking outside of the box, because you know, that's how they do stuff, and they could come up with something bigger and better. Who knows? You know what I mean? So.
Agreed. I'm very interested to see that. I'm trying to find so much information about the USFL draft, and nobody has it yet. I mean, they're just being very tight-lipped about everything so far. So it'll be very interesting to see how everything pans out with the draft for 2023.
Yes, sir.
So with two of your players getting NFL consideration and 10 years of work in the NFL yourself, could you see a return to the NFL in your future?
You know, I'm happy doing what I'm doing with the USFL. I'll be honest. I love the concept, and I love coaching the guys that I've got. If God blesses me with that kind of an opportunity to return to the NFL, I would consider that again a privilege and an honor, and would welcome it and would give it my darndest. But if I don't, I can sleep at night and rest my head knowing that I've done the best I can.
Absolutely. So you're not at all opposed to coaching in the USFL for the long term, if that's what presents itself?
Not at all. I think it's a great league, and I'm excited to be part of it and looking forward to the future.
Awesome. That's basically what I was leading up to there. So I'm going to leave you with one last question. I mean, you've worked with a lot of quality head coaches during your career. In 2022, you spent the season under a first-time head coach that you mentioned, Kirby Wilson. How do you feel about Kirby Wilson's performance stacks up to some of the guys that you've worked with in the past that are legends in coaching?
You know, Coach Wilson, he is a very smart and hardworking coach, and I was fortunate to be a part of his staff. His intentions are always to lead the team in the right direction, and I'm grateful and flattered that he asked me to be a part of his staff. There was a lot of learning being done by everybody, players, coaches, you name it. And I'm glad that he picked me to go and learn and be a part of the process with him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, once again, Coach, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I'm excited to see what you guys have in store in 2023.
Thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Go Maulers.
Absolutely. There we go. Have a great night, Coach.
You too. Thanks, Sam.
Absolutely.